Thanks for spending a few minutes with us as we recap another great month at your Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. We began this month on Round Island. DMR officials met there to discuss plans for ongoing restoration that will increase the shorebird habitat from 17 acres to 200 acres by using otherwise discarded dredge material from navigation and other projects. This time of year usually means oyster season. As anticipated, months of research and collaboration to develop sustainable oyster management and restoration plans culminated at October's Commission on Marine Resources meeting held in Hancock County. In an effort to launch a new strategy, DMR scientists ultimately recommended a limited season with a total stack limit equal to 10% of the estimated harvestable biomass. In a 3-to-1 split decision, however, the Commission determined overharvest was not a contributing factor to declining oyster populations and that the risk of leaving any unharvested was too great. An experimental season without a total stack limit will open on most reefs early in November. Speaking of seasons, Mississippi red snapper season drew to a close on October 31st, but the fight for more flexible regional management is far from over.
Wow.
I think the great thing about regional management is the flexibility. It is designed in such a manner that each state can talk to their stakeholders and devise a plan that works for their state and their stakeholders. Because, I mean, here's the deal. What's good for somebody in Mississippi may not be good for somebody in Texas or in Florida. They may have different desires or different wishes. We may only want to go fishing 10 or 15 days for red snapper, but we want to pick what days we want to go fishing.
Additionally, the Gulf Fishery Management Council and a House Resources Committee both heard arguments this month concerning regional red snapper management. In other red snapper news, our Office of Marine Fisheries once again teamed up with the Gulf Coast Research Lab for another release. Around 2,600 12-week-old juveniles were released on Fish Haven 3. Co-hosted by Weeks Baynear and our very own Graham Baynear, the annual gathering of the National Estuarine Research Reserve Association was held in the Southeast region this year. We take great pride in our role administering Tidelands Trust Funds, which arrived a little early this 21st year of the program. The trust is comprised of funds received from the lease of tidelands and submerged lands and are administered to qualifying applicants according to strict guidelines. For more info about the program, awarded projects, or to subscribe to application notifications, visit our website. Some of our staff were among the nearly 2,000 volunteers who helped out during the 27th annual Mississippi Coastal Cleanup. Almost 1,200 bags of debris were removed from over 100 miles of coastline. DMR thanks volunteers and the Mississippi Marine Debris Task Force that led up this effort. From lending a helping hand with junior marine scientists' science projects and inspiring curious minds to a youth leadership summit and the Jackson County Fair, we were out in full force this month making connections with our neighbors. There were several other things that happened at the agency in October, but we're out of time for now. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter in November.
Some of the terms you often hear about, especially with red snapper, overfished and overfishing. At the federal system, at the Gulf Council, they use those terms to manage these fisheries. Overfishing means you're currently fishing at a rate that's going to eventually crash the fishery. Overfished means overfishing may have stopped, but you have brought the fishery to a state where it no longer can sustain itself. Well, red snapper today is in a state of overfishing is not occurring, it's rebuilding.
There are numerous problems with the current federal management of red snapper. What we found time and time again is we keep getting hung up in the council process on numerous issues, and a lot of them revolve around administrative procedures and that such.
The federal management of red snapper has become very cumbersome. It's not an effective system for recreational fishermen especially. The process is slow, it's tedious, and takes an inordinate amount of time to get anything accomplished.
Clearly a decision that has been made. That area was added.
So why don't we see them here?
There's a lot of decisions to be made at the Gulf Council process when NOAA fisheries, they're just not equipped to deal with a private recreational fishery. They're just not.
The federal legislation, the Magnuson-Stevens Act, mandated that the council and NOAA manage some of these fisheries certain ways. And that has been good for rebuilding the fisheries, but now it has rebuilt, and the system is not really set up to be able to take that success and turn that back into opportunities for fishermen.
A great example is last year in 2014, they said that we'd have a 9-day season, and Louisiana's take of red snapper during that 9-day federal season should have been somewhere in the order of 700,000 pounds of red snapper taken recreationally. We figured out real quick that there's about 7 or 8 docks in Louisiana that land 80 to 90% of the red snapper during the season.
150 foot here, we're gonna drop about 100 foot and see if we can jig something up.
So when the season opened, we put somebody at the dock every day and counted every fish. And so when that 9-day season came and went, we knew that we had actually harvested 150,000 pounds of red snapper during that period. Came back to them and said, here it is. You had 550,000 pounds that were unaccounted for that we should have harvested. One of the big complaints from National Marine Fisheries Service was their inability to count fish real time. They have to forecast and kind of crystal ball, or impute, as they call it, numbers out into the future. So we immediately came back home and put in a real-time red snapper quota monitoring program called Louisiana Creel to demonstrate to them that we can have real-time landings within 10 days.
That would be a good one.
Yeah. You can maximize your harvest all the while rebuilding a fishery. We have the ability to make real-time decisions, the ability to collect real-time data to manage this fishery appropriately.
Got him?
Yeah.
Get him, Mo. Don't let him handle you.
You feel like, well, we can't go wrong by being overly conservative with regulations. It'll help speed up the recovery of this fishery, and that's not always true because fish will be eaten. Fish will die of natural causes, other things happen. So when fish are ready to be harvested, you want to maximize the ability of anglers to go harvest them.
Now that's a whole fryer.
In the state of Mississippi, we have moved towards a mandatory reporting system. As part of some of the stakeholder input, our fishermen said they would count every fish if that is what it took.
It looks like it's a subsurface current, so I'm gonna back up closer to the rig, all right?
You got it.
Where you have a stock that's rebuilding, you have an allowable catch that's increasing every year. We have the same amount of fish available to be taken according to National Marine Fisheries Service, but we only have 9 days. You're not optimizing your yield of these species. You're leaving fish on the table, fish that are going to die naturally or due to other causes that could have been harvested and enjoyed by anglers. But more importantly, the fiber of what coastal Louisiana is all about is fishing and seafood. It's not just a marina. The whole entire community that lives around that marina is supported by these fisheries.
Hey, back us up like that way.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that the snapper fishery didn't need some intervention, but what I'm saying is that I think we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But from an economic standpoint, it just doesn't allow the fishermen to go fishing. As you were a little kid, you would go and catch snapper and you would eat them all year, and now you only got just a handful of days to do it. I think at some point in time their data has to reflect the reality.
That's what we do, is manage fisheries for fishing, recreational and commercial. And to see those individuals pretty much cut out of a fishery that we believe is healthy and is thriving and has some additional opportunity for harvest there, that we ought to be able to look at those options and see what works best for our particular constituent base.
Buddy didn't get me in the rig.
Wow.
I think the great thing about regional management is the flexibility. It is designed in such a manner that each state can talk to their stakeholders and devise a plan that works for their state and their stakeholders. Because, I mean, here's the deal. What's good for somebody in Mississippi may not be good for somebody in Texas or in Florida. They may have different desires or different wishes.
The states have a long and storied history of successful management of commercial and recreational fisheries. We believe the states can do a much more effective job of managing the resource.
Whether you realize it or not, fish don't recognize the geopolitical boundaries, right? They swim wherever. So coordination among the states, you know, has been there from the beginning.
Affect fishing or for fishing.
With the council process, one thing that's challenging is that we're meeting across the Gulf. And so we may have a big decision on something that impacts Florida, but the decision is actually being made at a meeting, across the Gulf in Texas or Louisiana. It's difficult for stakeholders to make those meetings, and so I think one of the advantages of regional management is that we could do things more on a local scale and have management meetings and stakeholder meetings in the communities where the regulations would be happening.
The whole entire impetus here, whether it's through the regional management amendment at the Gulf Council or through some congressional action, is to save the recreational fishery, or preserve the recreational fishery, or put the recreational fishery in the same posture that the commercial and the for-hire fishery are in, where they're good and comfortable and have a system that works and everybody's happy with. That's the end game here.
What's happening with the red snapper management now is not fair to any of those sectors, and everybody could have more access, and at the times of the year that are most beneficial to them and their states.
The Gulf states are capable of managing red snapper fishery because they've done it for all sorts of other fisheries.
We run and manage some of the biggest and strongest commercial fisheries in the world. Why would we not continue that for red snapper? That's the question I ask.
We may only want to go fishing 10 or 15 days for red snapper, but we want to pick what days we want to go fishing.
Being able to have some flexibility with regional management is important because what works for Port Aransas does not necessarily work for Mobile or work for Pensacola or work for Tampa.
Louisiana is a weekend fishery, weekend warriors. We want to go and have crab bowls and get the kids out of school and go down fishing. What does it matter how I use my 40 days? If I use them in December, if I use them on weekends only, it really doesn't change anything. Whatever's the maximum economic boom, whatever's the maximum optimum yield we can get out the fishery, that's what Louisiana wants for its anglers.
So with regional management, it would allow us to tailor the fishery to the needs of the citizens of our states. And we'd love to partner with all three sectors, the commercial, the charter, and the recreational fishermen, to see a real change in this fishery.
I am the head fisheries manager for the state of Louisiana, and my job is to maximize those fisheries resources for the state. Every fish that is available to be harvested, we give our anglers the opportunity to harvest, all the while ensuring robust and sustainable populations for future generations of anglers to go fishing. Everybody wants that, and regional management or any delegation of authority to the states to manage this fishery is going to get us there.
Oh my goodness, look at the size of that monster.
That's good stuff.
That is a beautiful snapper.